Kia ora, talofa, haere mai, and welcome to this week's episode of the Niche Cache Variety Show. We are from the niche-cache.com. Shout out to all the quiche lovers. We are the Niche Quiche, and we love Aotearoa sport, and we are here to deliver a buffet of Aotearoa sporting goodness in the podcast video format. We're always writing about Aotearoa sports on our website, theniche-cache.com. But these are for the people who don't really read. Or if you're a super hardy Aotearoa Niche Cache fan, you're reading, you're listening, and you're watching, big it up to yourself. Otherwise, if you're not so good with the reading, you can tune into the podcast. And if you don't like podcasts, you can read. Like, it's all bases are covered here, Wildcard. And big up to the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/our Niche Cache, our Niche Cache. We just recorded a Patreon podcast for our special supporters, the VIP whānau. For Patreon, it is the best way to support the Niche Cache, straight up the guts, Wildcard, and just part of a warm-up kōrero. In that Patreon podcast, we broke down National League football, which was good, and we also broke down some Steven Adams contract stuff with the Memphis Grizzlies, and just running through some of the facts and figures, because the NBA salary cap is wide open. You can see, you can get all the information, and it helps with the discussion. NRL salary cap wildcard, not as transparent. So it kind of limits the discussion and the kōrero you can have around the NRL salary cap. But I was interested. I believe the NRL salary cap is going to increase. And I just want to put this out there that within 5 years, $2 million per season will be the benchmark for elite NRL players. But until then, I think the best way for NRL fans to view their salary cap is the 10% marker of the salary cap. And we were talking about the Memphis Grizzlies. You've got Ja Morant taking up 17.3% of the salary cap. Now, obviously in basketball, there's less players and there's more money. So that percentage can get skewed. If we're dealing, so right now the salary cap is around $10 million. So 10% of $10 million is $1 million per season. That's kind of the benchmark right now. If that goes up to $12 million, an NRL salary cap of $12 million, then that 10% marker goes up to $1,200,000. So if the salary cap goes up to $15 million, you're getting a 1.5 million. And I don't believe it will be too long before you hit a salary cap of possibly $20 million. But the key figure, because in the NRL, we don't know the exact player salaries. Any player salaries are just made up because no one knows. Like, you can throw numbers around all you like, but no one knows for sure. I think NRL fans should be tuned into what is the salary cap hit, as opposed to how much money a player is making. And if you can kind of figure out, read between the leaves of the percentage value or the salary cap hit, that is the best way to ponder the MRL salary cap in an environment where there is no transparency or minimal information.
Yeah, that context is quite important, isn't it? Because it's like the money that they make is kind of not, it doesn't matter. Like, whatever the actual value of it, it's not thinking about like, well, what would I do if I had $1 million? Like, it's like, you know, someone like, I remember when Ben Hunt signed with the Dragons, and it was like they obviously had to overpay to get him, but it was like $1 million plus a year for all these years. Like, it's this good deal. It's not about how much money he earns. It's not about whether I could have that money and buy a house somewhere. It's about how does that affect them building a team within the borders of the salary cap. Like, that's the important bit, and that does get lost a lot, doesn't it? Just like that context does get lost a lot because people just get swept up in the actual value of the numbers. And I guess it's because people are just thinking like, I wish I had $1 million, you know. It's probably like kind of that simple, rather than whatever the value is. It could be $1 million, it could be 10 million, it could be 100 million, it could be $10. So it doesn't matter. The point is, how does it fit within a salary cap?
And all these salary caps are increasing. So if you're hating on these players for having so much money, Probably need to keep some
Yeah, yeah, you're
Haterade
right.
because they're only going to be making a lot more money wildcard. Big up the website, theniche-case.com. Big up the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/our niche case. Big up the email dispatch via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com. The Monday banger is especially funky, coming after a weekend of Aotearoa sports, so that gets delivered every Monday night via the email dispatch, and then Friday evenings we swing back around with more Aotearoa sporting information via the email dispatch, and all of the Niche Cage content is part of that email, links to the website as well as the podcast. Podcasts start with a dose of mindfulness, wildcard. Hit 'em up.
Well, remember when I said I was reading this book about the Gnostic Gospels? Well, I picked it up again and read another couple chapters, and I scooped up a quote from out of there from a Gnostic scholar called, I think he's a poet actually, or poet/scholar, which sounds cool when the scholars are also poets back in the day. Like this, let's get back to that sort of way of doing things. But a fella called Theodotus, who was Theodotus of Byzantium, I checked it up. There's a few other Theodotuses, so I had to be specific. He once said or wrote or whatever, each person recognizes the Lord in his own way and not all alike. It's about like the Lord for whatever, if you want to pick a different version of, chuck a different deity or whatever in there, or if you just want to think about it in a general term in any other kind of context. Like, it's a nice way of pointing out that everyone's experience is unique. They don't always correlate. What's right for one person isn't necessarily right for someone else, but also what's wrong for one person doesn't have to be wrong for someone else either. And I very much liked that quote in the context of like the Gnostic Gospels, which were extra books of the Bible, or they weren't in the Bible was the whole point, but extra books that were written that kind of got like buried, called heretical and hidden, and like because it didn't fit the consistent doctrine that the early Catholic Church was trying to build up. And one of the key factors of a lot of those things is just about like basically what that dude said, like being able to experience divinity in your own way rather than the way that the church tells you is the only way. And a lot of it was about like control, the way they structured those things. And I like that idea from Mr. Theodotus about like, it doesn't have to be the way everybody else tells you it's going to be. Like you can experience like grace or divinity or whatever in the way that feels real to you, you know?
Beauty. What's your leading banger to start the sporting segment? You're on fire. You're in form. Hitting the middle of the bat.
Yeah, well, I mean, on the topic of grace, I'm hoping for a fair bit of that from the Wellington Phoenix this year, who start their season in a couple of days. The Phoenix best ever finish, third place of Victalai's first season in charge, which, not coincidentally, also the one season of his that was the least affected by COVID. All of them have been affected by COVID, but that was the least affected by COVID. Their record points tally, 46 points from 2014-15 season, back when it was 27 games as well. It's only 26 games now, so that's a factor. That was AKA the Nathan Burns year, 2014-15, when they got their most points. Last time they won a finals game, 2011-12, back when Paul Eiffel was still the star man. This season, Welly Knicks, they've got a settled squad with some genuine attacking depth, really focused on those attacking areas with their import signings. Great value coming out of the academy these days. Full slate of home games. They actually get to live in Wellington. They get to partake in their flash-ass new NZ Institute of Sport facilities as well that they've got going there with their sort of partnership. My All Whites prediction a couple of weeks ago didn't go too flash. I was predicting them to beat Australia, but that's still not going to deter me. I'm going to pick a finals win for the Wellington Phoenix this season. Another top three finish. Why not? Let's even go with a record points tally. I'll stop short of saying that they're going to actually win the league, but I'm also not going to say that they're not going to win the league. You know, I'm not going to close that door. Season starts on Sunday against Adelaide, 3 p.m. home game. And I'm just saying, like, I reckon this could be a pretty special season for the Wellington Phoenix. It just feels like one of those years where everything is in line towards them being the best version of that club that they can be. Might be the only chance they get because it's the last year of a Victalai's contract, but I just dig the alignment. I rate that everything seems to be pointing in the same direction. I think the Phoenix could be up to something pretty handy this season.
If the Warriors are cursed, what's the Phoenix divinity situation?
Um,
Like
well, I
just
mean,
alignment?
The Phoenix itself is a mythical creature, uh, rising from the ashes. You know, I think the idea was that it was like after the football kings and the New Zealand Knights, it was like the Phoenix of the third incarnation that's going to stick around, like rising from those ashes.
Third time
Um,
lucky?
yeah, third time lucky. Maybe there's something to say about rising from the ashes of like. I mean, they've been real competitive the last couple of years, despite having to live in Australia. Here they don't have to do anymore. So maybe like the ashes of the COVID pandemic was, I don't know. If the mythical bird count is divine, it's close enough, isn't it? It's still a magical creature of somewhere,
Yeah, but
and you gotta
saying
live up to the club's crest as well.
saying the Phoenix are a mythical creature is a bit different to the divinity of being cursed by the sporting gods, which is the Warriors. But it was a very
Sure.
open-ended question, and I
Well, they're different. We're expecting different fates of them as well, aren't we? Like the Warriors are cursed and then they keep losing. The Phoenix were talking about them winning games, so they're obviously not cursed. There must be something else. Um, Redemption, I don't know, something.
wildcard. I love the Penrith Panthers. I've come to that realization recently. I love everything about them.
A lot of people
Obviously,
don't.
obviously strong Kiwi-NRL flavor, but I think it's the South Auckland thing where it's like I don't know if Auckland was a Sydney with in relation to the NRL, the Penrith Panthers like they're from Western Sydney, so West Auckland might be a good comparison, but also Western Sydney is South Auckland. So I'm kind of fitting in with their vibe there. I like who they are, how they represent their area. I love the also underplayed in this is their cohesion and the intuition and the intangible elements of being together for a long time that helps you win. In Aotearoa, we call that, ideals such as mana, turanga waiwai. And that's what the Aotearoa Kiwis have as well, wildcard. And I think what I'm learning is that a lot of people are fascinated with talent. And everyone's looking at this World Cup as like, this team's got this talent, this team's going to be these players are playing here. The most underrated thing for Aotearoa Kiwis right now heading into this World Cup is the same thing that has made Penrith Panthers so successful. And that's their turanga waiwai, their mana, and having the same group around building together towards a common goal and who you represent and why you're doing it. And if you think back to the last World Cup, 2017, Aotearoa Kiwis mana under David Kidwell led to players not wanting to play for Aotearoa. That's not good, right? So a bunch of players were playing for Aotearoa, then they decided not to play for Aotearoa right before the World Cup. Compare that to what the Kiwis are doing now under Michael Maguire, and he has had the same group of players together building towards a common goal. And thinking back to a discussion we had about the All Whites wildcard, where some of these Aotearoa teams, a lot of the role players are young players. The White Ferns, a lot of their role players are younger players. A lot of the depth skews younger. And that's good. That's building. That's establishing some depth and bringing players into the international sporting arena. Kiwis, the depth is Isaac Liu. The depth is Shans Nickel Clockstead. The depth is Kieran Foran. And I think that's highly beneficial for the Aotearoa Kiwis heading into this World Cup. Yes, they are extremely talented, but they also tap into some of the Penrith Panthers ideals that have made them so successful in a different context. I think that's what the Aotearoa Kiwis are doing. That's why I've come to love the Penrith Panthers. And obviously, Aotearoa, we love Aotearoa. We also love Aotearoa Kiwis. But it's a very different appreciation now compared to whatever the fuck was going on in 2017. That was a shambles. Vitamin statistics wildcard.
Vitamin statistics. Steven Adams has gotten a new contract, and that's a pretty significant deal. don't really care about the financials of it because we talked a bit about that on the Patreon podcast just before, and B, not the point as to what you're saying at the start of it. It's about how he fits into a salary cap, and we did break that down in the Patreon thing. I had a feeling that he was going to sign a new contract with Memphis. I did say this, like I did nudge it in the Friday email when I was writing about some of his media day stuff, and I was being like,
did you predict that thing?
I predicted it, but also his GM had already said that he saw him as a long-term contract, as long-term part of the team, which is not something you say about a player who's only on an expiring contract. So, like, the clue was there. We're being honest, the clue was there. But yeah, is under contract for this season, plus 2 more on top. Hopefully, during that time, the Grizzlies will be competing for championships. Why did Steven Adams get extended? Well, first of all, it's funny that he did, because a year ago, people were talking about him being washed up because he was a poor fit in New Orleans, and this type of center can't compete in the NBA anymore. I've never known the internet to overreact to anything before, but apparently they did this time, because year one in Memphis was superb. The off-court stuff, obviously huge, great teammate, mentor, guide to a young team. Saw that minor and clear focus when he was benched in the playoffs for matchup reasons, and didn't bat an eyelid, just became the best asset that he could in a different role in the team, helping his team be better. But on the court was golden too. So some stuff that he did last year with Memphis Grizzlies, franchise record 349 offensive rebounds in a season. That's pretty handy. In fact, he actually led the entire NBA in offensive rebounds in terms of totals, in terms of per game, also in terms of percentage. His offensive rebounding percentage was the second best offensive rebounding percentage this millennium by any player who played as many minutes or more as him. Every team he plays for basically leads the league in offensive rebounds. I think it's 7 of the last 8 years this has happened. So it's not a coincidence. Wherever he goes, teams rebound offensively a whole lot better. Also had a career best 3.4 assists per game last season. And if he hadn't rested a few late games, he might have become the only man other than Charles Barkley in history with 300, well, in recorded history anyway, with 350 offensive rebounds and 200 assists in the same season. He got well over 200 assists, but 349 offensive rebounds, one short. Still, the only other guy other than Charles Barkley with 349 offensive rebounds and 200 plus assists in the same season. His points total was the lowest since his rookie year. But that's also part of it too. That's part of his fit in Memphis, is that he allows others to score. He allows others to take shots. He doesn't hog that stuff. And he helps others get shots a lot easier than other players do too, because he led the NBA in screen assists. He also averaged double digits rebounds for the first time in his career. He led the NBA in total box out. Oh yeah, and a 77% success rate on jump balls was by far the best in the business over anyone who had as many as him, and no one had as many as him. So anyone, like, the last asterisk that remains there is people might still be traumatized about the fact that he did get benched during the playoffs. That did happen. But just remember that he was absolutely immense when he returned from COVID against Golden State. He had the best plus minus in his team with a plus 32 in that series, despite the fact that it was a lost series. The Grizzlies outscored Golden State by 32 points with Adams on the court across all those games. He had the best offensive rating in his team, 120.2. Best net rating in his team, 19.1, plus 19.1. He was the Grizzlies' top rebounder, despite playing less than 30% of the total minutes. And all of this, despite the fact he did not share the court in that Warriors series for 1 single second with Ja Morant, who was injured about 10 minutes before Adams checked in for the first time on his return from COVID. So, yeah, that's why Memphis extended Steven Adams.
Spark up your vitamins. My vitamin statistic is about Aotearoa's best golfer ever, Lydia Ko, who finished third at the Ascendant Championship, which was in Texas. And not only does Lydia Ko live in the top 10 for LPGA Tour events, she is also highly ranked in a bunch of statistics. In the CME Globe, she is now first, which is basically the LPGA season. So, Lydia Ko, she might be the best player in the world. Rolex Player of the Year, she is fourth because she doesn't have many wins, but she is also first in the CME Globe. It averages out. Scoring average, Lydia Ko is first. birdies, 4th, strokes gained, 1st, putting average, 2nd, top 10 finishes percentage, which is like the amount it takes into account the amount of tournaments you play and how many top 10 finishes you get in those tournaments. Lydia Ko's 1st. Once again, Lydia Ko is a fucking beast. Deep in the mangroves wildcard. I'm still recovering from spotting Steven Adams deep in the mangroves there just before, but what are you going to do now?
You couldn't miss him. He stands out a little bit. No mangroves are that deep.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, a couple of weeks ago, I did a thing with the...
I was just thinking, if you just put Steven Adams in the middle of an estuary and just, waited for high tide,
and you'd be able to tell, is it at shin height or knee height?
It's peak high tide, and then you just see Steven Adams' head popping out of the water, and then it's low tide, and you can see, his ankles are covered in water. But carry on, sorry.
You could do that with just, I don't know, paint him on a post or something like that, or a plastic. It couldn't be cardboard because it'd rot, but a plastic cutout or something that is this exact height. You could. But
they do that for the any area that's flooding, right? You go drive over a bridge or whatever, and they have the marker. That should just be one Steven Adams, one's Sam Whitelock, one's Cole Jamieson, one's Valerie Adams. Just some of these
all the way down to Kane Williamson or.
No. It needs those any Kiwi who's nudging 2 meters tall. That's their job.
Their job. Well, that's something. I mean, he doesn't need the money. So once he's finished basketball, he can just stand by bridges to let people know if it's gonna flood.
It's dock volunteering.
Pretty much. I think he's always wearing that bloody Stony Creek shirt and the jacket. So I'm sure he owns a farm. I'm sure he's got some conservationist kind of ideals. We'll have to put this to him. I'm sure he'll be looking for something to do when he finishes basketball in, I don't know, 10 years. But yeah, with the Women's National League a couple of weeks ago, I did a thing just talking about the best emerging young players for each team. Most of those players ended up getting picked in the under-17 World Cup squad. That's now gone away, so there's that. The blokes are now started. The Men's National League started on the weekend. So I figured, in the interest of equality, I might as well do the same thing. Top emerging young player at each club, or at least, someone to watch out for, someone to learn the name of before they go on to bigger and better things. Working down from the top, Auckland City don't really pick teenagers. They do pick Joseph Lee a lot, a Korean Kiwi fellow who plays on the wing, really good left foot, skillful dribbler. He's an exciting fellow to watch. Set up their first goal on the weekend too. Birkenhead, got to go with Everton O'Leary, who made my team of the week. Right back, who's was away with the Oceania under-19s New Zealand squad there that won that thing. So a lot of these guys that I'm going to mention were in that squad, understandably, because those are the players that New Zealand football themselves picked out as the best young players. So it makes sense that would cross over. Everton O'Leary, right back, good dribbler, can cross the ball. He's an exciting looking player. Auckland United, kind of same as their women's team, kind of got heaps, quite a few. But in particular, I really liked what Oliver Fay did, both at that Oceania tournament and also just on the weekend against Melbourne. Really exciting player. Good dribbler, really good close control. Great passer, good vision, drops into good areas. Hints of sort of an Elijah Just kind of skill set, which is always a good thing to have. Melville themselves, Oliver Colotti, scoring a bunch of goals. He was tied golden boot at that Oceania thing, along with a fellow I'm going to mention later on. He's a very handy player. And Melville do also have Josh Galletley as well, who's a midfielder, a pretty tidy, skillful player of a similar age. Wellington Olympic, Theo Edema, really tall midfielder, can play a little bit of defense as well. He's I think he's 6'4". So if he has another growth spurt in him, I don't know if he does. But if he does, then he might qualify for standing by bridges for Doc as well status. We might get into that. But he's a good, tidy player. Good touch for a tall fella as well, which is always a good sign. Miramar Rangers, Wilson Suphanthavong, who is of Cambodian Kiwi heritage, I believe. Hence the last name Suphanthavong, which Man, the commentator, I can't remember who was commentating on Miramar Rangers' game on the weekend, but it was in Christchurch, so it would have been a Canterbury dude, and could not get that one out. Like there was some NRL commentators trying to pronounce Polynesian names kind of areas there. But Wilson Safanthapong, really good, exciting player. At the under-19s, he played as a wingback for Miramar on the weekend. He actually, because Hamish Watson didn't play, he played up front and just like speedy and behind the lines. Wellington Phoenix is their whole team is their whole team is under 20s, and they're all like about 12 or 13 of them were in that 19 squad. But in particular, I'll check out Isaac Hughes, good solid centre back. Charlie Beale, tidy midfielder. Noah Karunaratne, skillful sort of number 10/winger type. Napier City Rovers, Oscar Mason, got to be goalkeeper, been a quality prospect for a couple years. He's really solid technical keeper as well. He's a good one to watch. Kashmir Technical, Kyan Donkers was the guy who tied with Ollie Kalotti for the Golden Boot at the 19s. Came off the bench for Kashmir Tech on the weekend, scored a goal. That's what he does. Just playing with absolute confidence, looking to take guys on. He looks like a guy who's he knows he's been scoring a lot of goals and he wants to just keep doing so. And then Christchurch United, same as Auckland City, didn't have a player in that under-19 squad. I've picked out Riley Grover, though. I think he's 18 years old, started at left wing back for them on the weekend. Can also play centre back. A solid up-and-coming fella from Christchurch United. So there you go, 10 clubs, picked out someone from every one of them. There you go.
I'd like to add Nelson Asafa Solomona to the water height gauge.
Yeah, definitely.
He deserves a mention there. Deep in my Mangroves wildcard, where we are assessing the high tide value, celebrating the Penrith Panthers and all their Kiwi-NRL juice, because the Panthers won every single competition this year. SG Ball, Jersey Flag, New South Wales Cup, NRL, and then the New South Wales Cup team also dismantled their Queensland equivalent in the North's Devils. And the Panthers did so with Kiwi NRL players in those teams. Obviously, NRL, you had Moses Leota, James Fisher-Harris, and Scott Sorensen. New South Wales Cup, Preston Ricky, also from the Hokianga region, James Fisher-Harris's hometown. He played pretty much every game on an edge for Panthers New South Wales Cup. And I think he could be sniffing NRL footy next season after a big summer training period, because Viliami Kikau is leaving to the Bulldogs. So there might be a couple of spots in that forward pack opening up for Preston Ricky. Under 21's Jersey Flag, the Panthers had Dayon Amatuanai. He's a Whiti Tira Jr. from Otaki, and he played most of the season in Jersey Flag, but he also played a bunch of games in New South Wales Cup. Flag Panthers also had William Whakato Mafe Otahuhu Jr. He played most of the season at centre for the Panthers, as well as a couple of games at fullback in their Jersey Flag team. And they also had a dude by the name of Eli Tuia, who is from Randwick in Wellington, also a St. Bernard's College, I believe, but definitely a Randwick junior in Wellington. He's a big bopper in the Panthers forward pack for their Jersey Flag team. Get down to SG Ball. There's a guy, Isaiah Katoa, who was signed to the Redcliffe Dolphins. He is also from Wellington, but I think he moved to Sydney at quite a young age, so there's not concrete information about his grassroots connections to Wellington. But they did have Kyson Kingy, who was a Kerry junior. And he played most of the season in the Panthers SG Ball team as a middle forward for them as well. So the Panthers, they got Kyson Kingy, they got Preston Ricky and Fisher-Harris, all from Northland, which is bloody impressive. Amatuanai, he's from a little pocket as well. Horowhenua, Whakato Mafe, kind of mandatory South Auckland junior that every NRL club has. And a little bit of Wellington funk there as well with Eli Tuia. Also, you'll see Phil Gould popping around with the Panthers winning the championship, their second in a row, third grand final in a row. Phil Gould, mastermind of this whole Panthers system. One of the first things he did was he went to Northland. And he set up some training academies and camps in Northland. Next minute, James Fisher-Harris, Corey Harawira-Naera, and Caleb Aikens joined the Panthers. Caleb Aikens was just named in the Wales World Cup squad as well. So you're like, Phil Gould's talking a lot about his 5-year plan and all this kind of stuff. Phil Gould himself went to Whangarei to connect with local rugby league juniors. And that produced the likes of James Fisher-Harris, Corey Harawira-Naera, and Caleb Aikens. Fisher-Harris obviously holding it down with the Panthers right now. So pretty, like, Phil Gould, obviously fantastic work in the local area. Also bloody impressive to get up north and find a market inefficiency in the Kiwi-NRL scouting department. Question time, Wildcard. My question to you. Oh no, one more thing about the Panthers. I want to throw it out there. I am fascinated by who is next for the Panthers, because they are the most desirable NRL club. And if I'm a Kiwi NRL junior, I'm trying to get in that Panthers system ASAP. And the Panthers have done a good job recently of Kiwi NRL recruitment. They signed Kaisen Kingi, Amatuanai, Whakatomafe, Tuia, and Ricky last summer. So they're obviously getting busy in the Kiwi NRL recruitment department and trying to build that out. And I'm fascinated by who is the next Kiwi NRL junior to enter the Panthers system, because if that was my bro, my son, they don't have a women's team. So I wouldn't be recommending my daughter go there. I'd get her into a women's team. But if I had a young Kiwi NRL junior son, I'd be, mate, get over to the Panthers, because they are hot and look after you, develop you well as well. And that is to say, maybe the Panthers more desirable than the Storm or the Roosters. Far more desirable than anything in Aotearoa, let's just say that. Question time, actual question time. What is your favourite football highlight from the weekend? Busy chopping up all the little montage highlight packages? What was your pick of the bunch?
Well, there's many candidates for that honour. But I couldn't possibly, in good conscience, go beyond what Leat did on debut for Aston Villa, where it was a League Cup game, group stage. So the way they do that is it's like, well, first of all, when the League Cup group stage comes along, it's a good opportunity for some of the reserves to get games. She did that for West Ham last year. That's where she started getting games for them. Had to sit on the bench the first couple of games for Villa in the league, but League Cup means opportunities. They're playing Manchester United at home. She plays really well, good 1-1 draw, good solid effort. Made a great save 1-on-1 in the 93rd minute or something to preserve that draw. And then when there's a draw in the group stage of the Conti Cup, you go to a penalty shootout. Everyone gets 1 point for the group, and then there's a penalty shootout. If you win that, you get a bonus point. She saved 4 penalties in the penalty shootout. I can't think of another example of anyone saving 4 penalties in the shootout. It's not like 4 were missed. It's like she saved all 4 of them. And I watched the whole shootout. She dove the right way on every single one as well. The commentators on the Man United feed was sort of like, is she allowed to do this where she stands behind the goal and then steps onto the line and moves? It's like, well, yeah, because she's not going in front of the line. She's just an outstanding bit of goalkeeping on debut as well. And yeah, she was the hero for the under-17s at the World Cup a couple of years ago, where she saved a penalty against Japan in a quarterfinal and scored a penalty, the winning penalty in the same one. So she seems to know her way around a penalty shootout. I would, got to chuck in Leat there. And in light of Leat, because I was thinking what a great individual performance that was, I thought I'd just ask you, what's the best individual sporting performance that you have seen recently?
I think Joseph Tapani's form for most of the season was pretty epic. He strung together a bunch of 200-meter games, but James Fisher-Harris might have played his best grand final performance, and he's played in the last 3, right? He played 59 minutes, 20 runs for 201 meters, and you might not have noticed it. He's just regular mahi for James Fisher-Harris, right? That's what he does most weeks, but when I went back and checked through the previous grand finals, this was by far and away the most minutes, the most meters, and the most mahi for Fisher-Harris. So I don't know, just celebration for Fisher-Harris. He's a back-to-back champion, 3 grand finals in a row, second longest standing Panther in their current squad. Now he's off to a World Cup. Shout out James Fisher-Harris. Musical Jam Wildcard. Best piece of Aotearoa music of the year, Avondale Bowling Club and their new album Trees. Epic. Obviously, Avondale Bowling Club is a bit jazzy, Tom Scott rapping, and it's just fantastic music. Mandatory listen for Niche Cage fans, Avondale Bowling Club, Trees. Also, shout out Freddie Gibbs got an album, Soul Sold separately, and Boldy James and Nicholas Craven, little low-key avant-garde hip-hoppy banger. No Robbery, I don't know, just search Boldy James and Nicholas Craven. I forgot the name. CBF looking it up right now. Your musical jam?
Yeah, I just want to second the Avondale Bowling Club one. It was, I'm always a little bit, I don't listen to that much hip hop, but when I do, I'm always a bit of a sucker for like the jazzy undertones. And this isn't even like jazzy undertones. This is just literally like rapping over jazz music, which sounds awesome. And then like, I don't know that Tom Scott's ever been like better lyrically than he is on that album too. I'm just listening to the thing. There's that one song in particular is Friday Night at the Liquor Store, which has a great video for it as well. And I listened to that one like 3 times in a row, just being like, and every time I listen to it, it's like the first verse is the best thing I've heard in like months. And then I've like, oh no, wait, the third verse is and then I'm like, no, the second verse is, like every time I listen to it, there's like another line or couplet or whatever, which is just like, how do you write that? Like, how do you come up with that? Is that bit where he's like the best of West Auckland's worst combined forces and blah blah blah. He goes on, and it's just like that's nuts. Like that album is fantastic. That is a cracker.
Like a lot of people, their job is social commentary. Like a lot of people are reporting from the streets and commenting on this latest thing and doing this and doing that. Fuck all that. Just listen to Avondale Bowling Club.
I thought the same thing. I was like listening to it and being like, this is a social artifact. Like this is describing something that people have tried really hard to capture, and then he's done it.
Yeah, like on the news or whatever, they'll be like, yeah, we're crossing live to university lecturer, head of social sciences.
And they're going to talk about the ram raid epidemic.
We're like, all of the problems in Aotearoa, all of the situations, all of the good things, all of everything about Aotearoa right now, you can learn about just from listening to Avondale Bowling Club Trees. He's just telling you everything that's happening at every level of Aotearoa. It is fantastic. While we're here, just to finish up, Nicholas Craven and Boldy James, Fair Exchange, No Robbery. Listen to that. It goes hard. Listen to the Niche Cage podcast. We go hard. And we're always writing. So check out the website, theniche-cage.com. Kia kaha. Moldy order. Raise your mana. Stay beautiful. We'll be back on Thursday with another podcast. Boom. Shakalaka. Your bum smells like caca. Church.